I am from the Internet Systems Consortium, and for those of you who don't know, we're an open source developer. We provide the Bind9 DNS software, and we have also 2 different DHCP implementations. We're not ISC2, and no relationship. So I'm going to talk about something that's sort of orthogonal to what we just heard, but let me just get into it. So I think this is a bad AI-generated picture of a kid picking up a piece of candy on the street. And what I just wanted to introduce is the question, how do you know what you're getting when you download software off the internet? Probably most of us are aware of the dramatic problem with the, sorry, this is super sensitive. The dramatic problem with the XE utilities backdoor. So remember the SolarWinds debacle of a couple years ago, and we know that this is probably just a very small percentage of the actual problems with contaminated or infected code. So the good news is, I guess, the government is here to help. There are many initiatives coming up now. It's clear that the governments both here and in Europe have started to feel the need to establish some standards, possibly some regulations for software security. These are basically all best practices, and they're really developed by software security experts. I'm not an expert on any of these, but I've read all of them. They address slightly different problems, but none of them, they're not bad ideas. At ISC, we pretty much already do almost all of these things. One thing that they have in common, all of them have a concept of, software and critical software, critical applications. And I think all of them consider that network infrastructure is critical, and particularly applications that have a control function in network infrastructure. So the problem, of course, is that none of these listed best practices will ensure that the software is actually secure or even that it works at all. So one of my colleagues, Peter Spacek, who is kind of a troublemaker and a senior QA engineer for the Bind9 software, got the bright idea to do a survey and ask a bunch of users, how do they determine software quality or software security when they're looking at a choice of packages to use. And he and I made a survey. We sent it to the RIPE open source working group. We sent it to the DNS Ops ITF mailing list. We posted it on our social media, and we got 71 responses. So this is a very imperfect survey. We're not Nielsen. You can argue all day long about the bias and the questions, but I just want to share with you, here's a link to the survey. You can download a PDF and read all the answers. This is just the first question on the survey. When you're selecting an open source system to use for a critical application, how do you build confidence in the software project? We allow people to pick, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 choices. I'm not sure how many, so that's why they don't add up. But the number 1 thing people look for is documentation. The number 2 is a very active user mailing list, releases that are frequent or recent releases, and of course, software that they are already familiar with. So these sound like very reasonable answers. Probably nobody would think that's an unreasonable choice. So we looked at, well, what do we actually do for our software? So by most measures, Bind it's gnarly, it's 26 years old. It's huge. It's over 250,000 lines of code, not including the tests. There's been over 50 authors. Tail was one of them. There's at least 325 configuration knobs, and we've got at least 130 published CVEs. So Most of the requirements lists drawn up by experts would class bind and similar applications that are used for network control as critical applications. In general, we do all the things on these expert lists. We have development processes. We have a lot of, test suites. We look at our test coverage. We've got a lot of automation. We do ad hoc testing. We spend a tremendous amount of time investigating security vulnerabilities. And just to impress you, I have a couple of eye charts. Here's just a snapshot of, one view of, one continuous integration pipeline. Here's a checklist for the release process. I could give you a whole lot more slides about signing tarballs and all that stuff. And since it's open source, you can actually see a lot of the artifacts of our testing and our checklists online in our open development environment. However, these things that we're spending so much time on, we're at the bottom of the list of things that users say that they look at. And it's surprising, but it's not surprising. So at the moment, so we have a lot of self-imposed policies, published policies. One thing that I was pretty proud of, and I'm a little surprised that nobody cares, that OpenSSF software quality badge. We had to answer about 50 really detailed questions about our processes. We had to provide URLs or artifacts to kind of prove that we do these things. And I was so pleased when we got it. And that is the absolute last thing. I think one person said they ever look at that. So clearly, we shouldn't be investing time in these things that people don't care about. So here's kind of a summary. I wouldn't say that documentation is unimportant. The Bind Administrative Reference Guide is a reference. It does not tell you everything you need to know about how to run the software. But if it's wrong, we consider that a bug and we will fix it. But it certainly doesn't consume the amount of time and effort that we spend on continuous integration and code reviews and things like that. So really what I was wondering, I don't have an answer. It seems to me entirely possible maybe the experts are wrong and the users have figured out that following these best practices for process is not as good an indicator as the user mailing list. I don't know. Maybe the users are evaluating results and the experts are just making a checklist. It occurs to me it's possible that the focus on software security is based on exciting, interesting, alarming things that happened in the news, and maybe it's missing a much more fundamental problem, that maybe we're just too preoccupied with security vulnerabilities as opposed to other problems. And I guess I'm done. But I don't have the answer, and I'm just curious to know what other people think.
Lindsay from Xmission. I'm definitely on the other end of that user of your possibility, of your list of possibilities. I'm definitely not a developer in this strictest sense at all. And so I think I'm on the newbie list where I'm always, and this kind of really highlights my bias there, where I am always assuming whoever is developing the software knows what they're doing and that they've already vetted the code. And so whatever they've done, I'm relying on their documentation to explain what I need to do with it. And so I think, at least from my point of view, this does kind of open up where I do need to, at least develop my own kind of sense of what I should be looking at in terms of how can I determine something as more secure as a software.
Well, that's very trusting of you.
I know, it's kind of
lovely.
not great.
And I'm sure many software developers aspire to issue secure, reliable, good quality software, but I mean, just looking at the history of the few horrible things that we know about with infected code, and I'm sure there's a lot more there, you need to do something for risk management. If you look at the survey, we asked other questions about how do you manage the risk in your environment, and people had very good answers. You know, some people actually test the software before they deploy it. Like 35% of the people claim that they test it, so it surprises me, but it's possible. I know we have to hurry, so Tail, maybe you're the last question.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll be real quick and just say that this software integration and update process is super difficult all over the place, right? Like my phone downloads dozens of updates a week that I have absolutely no insight into what's changing and how what the process was. Like the things that you thought were very important, I also think are very important, and I really respect that ISE is doing all those things, but I don't check them, right? Who has time? The modern world is overwhelming, and we are running so much on trust. So I am glad that ISE is taking all of those steps to ensure that the trust is well placed. But I don't know how you actually compel people to pay attention to how you've earned that trust.
Right, and the thing is that, I mean, I didn't talk in any depth about these different regulations and standards that are coming out, but they're all going to impose some burden. Filling out paperwork, in some cases, the CRA, you may have to hire auditors to audit your processes. And at the end of the day, they're not actually going to make the software any more secure. I'm not against them, but it's not going to improve quality that we fill out a form that said that we tested it, which is basically what these amount to. Anyhow, I'm here all week. Happy to chat with anybody about it offline.
We have used up the 10 minutes for this lightning talk. If you have a really quick question, you can ask Vicky. Okay, otherwise you can find Vicky offline and have a discussion with her.